Today I want to teach you some simple rules for how to checkmate your opponent's king when you have a king and a queen against a king. I've seen many games by young players where one side will attain an overwhelming material superiority but not be able to win the game simply because they don't know how to checkmate their opponent. So I'm going to teach you just some simple rules for how to checkmate your opponent's king when you have a king and a queen and your opponent has only a king. This will get you on the road toward learning how to checkmate and how to play chess. Well, there are 5 rules. I've put them in the blog post that accompanies this video. The first is to get your king and queen in the middle, and by the middle I mean the center of the board. D4, E4, D5, and D5. Your objective is really not to get your pieces in the center, but to get your opponent's king out of the center. But how do you do that? Well, the way to do that is to put your pieces in the center. If your king or queen stand in the center of the board, the black king has to be out of the center of the board. He has to move toward the edge. So our first objective is to get the pieces into the center. Notice that black wants to stay in the center, and he tries to do that, but your king is going to deprive him of his center squares. Notice that now D5 and D4 are guarded by your king, and E4 is guarded by the queen. And so the king has to move out of the center. Now you can move your queen into the center and make the box. The second rule is to make the box smaller. If we draw lines from the queen to the edge of the board, it makes a box, an imaginary box. And notice that the king is in this box. Right now it measures 5 by 5 or 25 squares. And our objective is to make that box that this opponent's king is in smaller and smaller and drive him towards the edge of the board. And notice that we moved the queen up, made the box a little bit smaller. One row smaller. Now it measures 4 by 5, including 20 squares. Make the box a little bit smaller. Notice that when the kings stand opposite each other like this, if the queen checks on this row, it cuts off the whole row and the king has to move back a row. Queen makes the box a little bit smaller, and now the king must move to the edge of the board. When the king gets to the edge of the board, I recommend that you use your queen to cut off the row. In this case, cut off this horizontal row that is right next to the row that the king stands in. If you do that, rather than continuing to make the box smaller and smaller until the king is in a corner, you'll avoid stalemate. And now, the fourth rule, get your king in position. What I want you to do is get your king directly opposite your opponent's king when he's standing on the back row, and when you do that, the next move will be checkmate. And here we can move the queen to C7 checkmate. And here we have the 1, 2, 3 checkmate, where 1, the king stands on the edge of the board, 2, your queen checks from immediately next to him in line, and 3, your king supports your queen, protecting it from capture. There is another checkmate in this position. If we go back to the previous position, the queen can checkmate on the back row. These 2 squares are guarded by the king. This row is guarded by the queen. The queen delivers check and guards all of the squares on this row. And this D7 square is covered by the queen, guarded by the queen to prevent the king from escaping there. It's a pretty little checkmate, and one that you ought to know and keep in mind. Well, okay, those are the simple rules for how to checkmate your opponent's king when you have a king and a queen against a bare king. next time I'll show you how a young player that I taught these rules to was able to apply it. Hope you enjoy it and learned from it.